Hi, my name is Rachel, and today I have a tutorial for you on how you can achieve a very volumetric, high contrast look with Christmas ornaments. You can, of course, use this same theme with other things, but I'm specifically doing the Christmas ornaments for this time of year. It can be nice to enhance your picture with different styles, and sometimes it's nice to go with a little bit of a darker shadowing and brighter lighting, and kind of really give your picture some pop. The way the deep shadows and those bright highlights work together really helps to bring the image off the page and give your colorings a very three-dimensional look. I am putting this tutorial out in conjunction with Coloring Book Cafe's 5-day Christmas coloring contest challenge. They put out a few of these challenges every year. The current challenge you have until December 13th to register for. Registration is completely free this time around, and you will receive a 10-page PDF of their Christmas coloring pages. All of them are from their newest Christmas releases, so if you've done previous ones, these are going to be all new pictures this time around. For the competition, you have to complete 3 pages from the provided 10-page PDF, and then you have from the 13th through the 17th to submit all 3 of your pictures in one go in order to be considered an entry. This is one of the pictures that is included, which is why I was using this as my tutorial. And after the 17th, then voting will begin on the winners. Now, the 5-day coloring challenge is nice because in that coloring competition, they actually have a first, second, and third place winner, and there is a colored pencil prize for each of those placings. The first place prize for this competition will be a Castle Arts Botanical colored pencil set. The second place prize is the Black Widow pencil set, and the third place prize is the Black Widow skin tone pencil set. So if you think the idea of coloring up some Christmas pages and possibly having the opportunity to win some pencils sounds like fun, then I would encourage you to enter the coloring competition. I will provide the links in the description below. I love coloring competitions. I think they're a really great way to kind of push artists to do their best job, or perhaps even just to try out something new. You also have the benefit of seeing other people's entries, and that can oftentimes give you ideas on styles and themes that you haven't tried before, which is why I'm providing a tutorial for anyone who would like to maybe do something they haven't done before in a coloring. For this tutorial, I am going to go step by step through the process I use to color ornaments in a very three-dimensional manner, kind of to help you if you'd like to achieve a nice high contrast. That's the deep shadows and the bright colors and the really bright highlights, so that you can get a little bit of extra depth and form that kind of helps bring your picture right off of the page. And with that, let's get into the tutorial. Okay, for this particular tutorial, I'm going to be using Artezas to start off with, and I will probably finish off with Prismacolor so that I get a smoother blend at the very end. You can, of course, pick whatever pencils you like. If you prefer the more oil-based pencils like polychromos, you can achieve a lot of the same effects, but you have to do a lot more layers, because I find the wax pencils do a much creamier, cloudier blend with pressure than the oil-based do. So if you want to do it with oil-based pencils, you just end up doing a lot more layers over time, and you can get a much similar blended effect. So I'm going to be starting off this tutorial with the Arteza Onyx Black. There's actually 2 blacks in the Arteza set. There is the Noir, which is a more pitch dark black. This is a slightly cooler, slightly lighter black, and this is why I'm going to start with this one. And what I'm essentially going to be doing is I'm going to be more or less sketching out where I want my deepest shadows to be. And it's almost like creating a very rough grayscale that I will then use underneath my picture as I am applying the layers of color on top. Now you may have heard that it's usually best to start with your lightest colors, and that is true because if you want like a high white or light area, you can never really go back and make an area lighter or get it as light as when you start with the bright white paper. However, when it comes to layering pencils, it really does matter what order you layer your colors in. So I'm going to do a blue bauble and a red bauble. Now I could start out with a blue pencil for the blue bauble and then add some darker shadows on top. However, if I start out with my dark shadow underneath, I can actually achieve a much richer dark, which will contrast nicely with the lighter colors. And I'm going to be deliberately leaving a little outline of light on the edge, which will help to give it the feeling that these are reflecting other lights around, and also because they are not sitting on something but kind of hanging, then you actually get more light that kind of wraps around each of these baubles. So you see I'm using multiple light sources. One of the nice things about Christmas decorations is oftentimes there are the strands of Christmas lights, and so there may actually be more than one light source. You can always, of course, if you want to keep it simple, just kind of do the standard light coming in from one direction, shadow, heavier on the opposing side. But with the Christmas decorations, if you kind of want to give them that more, there's more ambient light in the room, more than just one light source, you can kind of give them some brighter and some dimmer light sources, and kind of give it the appearance that there's more decorations in the room. So what I'm doing is basically making these shadows relatively similar in appearance. Now, because of the nature of having different lights from different areas, you don't have to be super careful as far as how you are planning out where the light shine is, because the light might be positioned closer to one side of one bauble and farther away from the same side of a different bauble. And so if you just kind of give it a similar look, it'll still have the appearance that it's in the same room, the same lights are affecting it, but you don't have to be really exact in how those lights fall on each individual object. So now I'm going to go in and start to deepen some of the shadows. And it's nice to have a kind of a deep dark line near the bottom, where even though there's reflecting light coming up from underneath, it kind of creates the appearance that maybe it's reflecting something in the distance, maybe it's reflecting a surface in the distance, to give kind of a definitive line to that bottom shadow. And as you can see, I'm making the shadows deeper in some areas and lighter in other areas. And here I'm creating a slight cast shadow from the front bauble here onto the back bauble. Now whenever you're creating a cast shadow from one object onto another, depending on how sharp the line of the shadow is, and how dark the shadow is, will define how close each object is to each other. So a short, dark, very crisp shadow means that this object is very close to this one. If I were to have this be very muted and less defined and much lighter, it would actually make the appearance that this was farther away from this one. Okay, so I have my basic, what I'll call my basic grayscale for each of these baubles, and now I can start going in and actually adding the details over the top of them. So while I am going to be using the Arteza pencils, I will also be mixing in Prismacolor. Now I very commonly mix pencil sets, and that's because pencil sets each have their own strengths and weaknesses. I really like Prismacolors for their nice soft ability to blend, their creaminess, and especially because they can actually pick up color, move it around, and they work in a sense very much like a oil pastel, where I can actually move it around, which is a little bit unlike other colored pencils where you're really just layering every layer of color on top of each other, and it's about how you position each color. With the Prismacolors, I can actually kind of adjust where my picture is going. I can you know, pull colors in and push colors out, which is something that a lot of other color pencil sets don't have. Now, because of that soft malleability of the Prismacolors, it's much harder to get sharp lines, and so I oftentimes don't want to do a whole picture in Prismacolors, or it ends up looking very cloudy because I don't have any sharp definitive lines. So oftentimes I will use a harder pencil cord pencil set that I put down the initial lines, then I can start putting the Prismacolors over that, and I'll start to move and shape and pull those lines, but there will still be some very set lines that remain on the page. The first thing I'm going to do now is go in with my white Prismacolor, and I'm going to sort of block off areas I don't want to get other color, like these edge cast, this edge cast light that's coming from some other ambient light source. So I'm going to fill in this with just a small layer of Prismacolor so I can work colors over that later, and it will resist extra color from going on the paper. And I'll also add a little bit of final shine with that white so that while I'm doing this, it doesn't overshadow where I want all the shine on this paper to be. Okay, so now I kind of have my my initial base down. I've got my whites that are blocking where I don't want too much color to be added. I've got my dark undertones so that as I add colors over them, it'll keep a nice deep contrast. Whereas if I started with my lighter colors, I might not be able to build up that deep color contrast. And as I work along, I will slowly bring in my colors and make the light areas of each of these Christmas ornaments smaller and smaller. So I'm going to start with Arteza's Indigo for the first bauble, which will be a blue bauble, and the second bauble I will do as a red bauble. So with this Indigo, which is the darkest blue I'm going to be using from the Arteza set, I'm going to pretty much just go over those shadow lines. And I'm going to kind of keep to the same, heavy in the heavy areas, lighter in the lighter areas. Because essentially I put down that those shadow lines as a guide on how I want to then color the ornaments later. So I'm putting just a hint of this blue over these stripes. I'm going to have these stripes as being painted, but I'm going to have this as kind of like a glass, a blue glass ball where there is paint over it, and so it's okay to have some of that blue as an undertone beneath where I will then eventually put other colors. But I'm going to try and stay away from it on the center of the ornament, just on the edges where you might get a little bit of that blue glass coming through or reflecting off of it. It is easier if you just do the whole bauble as one solid color and maybe do some extra detailing at the end, but I'm going to just do these two stripes with a slightly different color as I proceed. And as you'll see, I am trying to bring just a hint of that blue into that under lighted area. Now I'm going to go in with a mid-tone blue, still sticking with the Artezas. This one's going to be sapphire blue. And now I'm going to switch to a sky blue, which is a very light, it's one of the lighter Arteza blues. And I'm just going to, again, add a little bit more highlights and undertones within the blues I've already put down, just to give a little variation. Really kind of makes that color pop out. So if you only have one pencil set, or if you don't like to do a lot of layers or a lot of fiddling, you just kind of like to do a, get your colors down, kind of get the look you're going for, you could go ahead and start, you either burnish, leave it like this. I mean, there's many different finishing styles you could do. However, like I said, I like to kind of build up those layers and then kind of work with the colors after I've gotten down my initial layers. So I'm going to start going in with my Prismacolors to kind of enhance what I've already got. So I'm going to take a deep Copenhagen blue, that's from the Prismacolors, and I'm going to go over a lot of the blue areas. This is also sort of a burnishing of the darker areas. And I like to put the color, maybe not exactly the same way I put the other colors, to kind of give it extra reflection, extra shine. Just a lot of different colors kind of moving about as you would see it on an item in a room that has multiple lighting, where the light doesn't always sit exactly even, and there can be different tones showing through. Now I'm going to start doing some real soft blending into the lightest areas. So I'm going to take a Prismacolor Cloud Blue and work on those edges right towards the shine. And like I said, I kind of like to play around with the shadows once I start doing my Prismacolor, so I'm going to go in with a 90% cool gray and kind of add some depth to those shadowed areas. And now I'm going to go back in with my Copenhagen Prismacolor to kind of finish my burnishing of the blue area. And I'm going to go back in with that cloud blue and do a little more softening of my colors. And I'm also just going to touch up a little bit with that Sapphire Arteza, as I sometimes find it's a good idea when mixing pencil sets especially to kind of burnish with one pencil set and then burnish with another. It really helps to fill in those cracks, and it also helps to keep that saturation from building up, because the binders are going to be slightly different between pencil sets, and so you can actually color one set over another set more times than you can color the same set over itself repeatedly. Okay, so I think I'm good with how the blue part of this ornament has come out so far, and now I'm going to go in and I'm going to give it a silver stripe and a golden stripe as the pattern that's going across this bauble here. So I've already got the Arteza Onyx Black underneath, and so what I'm going to do the silver is I'm going to go in with a Prismacolor 90% cool gray, a Prismacolor 50% cool gray, and the Prismacolor 10% cool gray to kind of enhance that silver part of the ornament. So I'll start with the shadow area here. Now I'm going to go in with the 50% cool gray and kind of blend that into where the lighter area is. Then I'm going to go in with the 10% cool gray and blend it into the lighter area even lighter now. Okay, now I'm going to add a little bit more color so I have a little bit more color on the paper to work with as I move these shadow bits around with the silver area here. So I'm going back in with that Prismacolor 90% cool gray. And now I'm going to go back in again with the 50% cool gray. And I'm going to go back in with the 10% cool gray to kind of work those areas over. And I'm just going to keep playing around with the colors and mixing them together, kind of like, as I said, like an oil pastel or even like a paint, until I get kind of the shading that I want in there. It can be a little bit hard when you're working with a pattern to try and match up those shadows. So sometimes I just have to touch up a little bit just to try and get that shadow and shine to kind of line up from one color segment to the next. Alright, and then this final strip is going to be a gold. So for my base color, I'm actually going to go in with a brown to try and get that the gold shadowed area. And I'm using the Arteza Cocoa Brown for the initial layer. And then to give it a little bit of color, I'm going to go in with Prismacolor Sand, as the Prismacolor lights are very good at blending. So the lighter the color, the more I like to use the Prismacolors because they blend very well. This is just going to give just a hint of a golden. Now I'm going to go in with a Prismacolor Cream to kind of fill in the rest of that bar and blend it through. I gotta add a little bit more brown in there. And to get more of a bit of color, I'm going to go in with a yellow ochre to add a little bit more of the gold color into the golden area. And I'll blend that over with the cream again. Okay, so now it has that appearance of you know, a blue ornament that kind of has a painted silver stripe and a painted gold stripe that are kind of in that semi-metallic, semi-matte, semi-gloss paint, and the ornament itself is probably in a very shiny glass or, you know, semi-matte glass material. Okay, so I'm going to start now on the red orb here, and I'm going to start off with a sort of a purple, what's actually I'm going to be using wine red, the Arteza wine red as my initial undershadow color layer. And just like with the blue, where I started with the indigo, I'm just going to pretty much highlight where the main shadows are and just start giving those shadows a bit of their own color. And here I do have to work around the stars on the pattern here. Now to get the main color of the bauble, I'm going to start with Arteza's Carmine Red. Okay, so now I'm going to start to kind of burnish and bring out the color. So I'm going to start with, for the shadowed areas, I'm going to start with that 90% cool gray just to add a little bit into the deepest area of the shadows before I start going over with the main red that I'm going to use. So now I'm going to want to start to burnish that red area, so I'm going to go in with a Prismacolor Crimson Red. And then to soften that red into the light, I'm going to actually go in with a Prismacolor Peach. And I'm going to go back in with the Arteza to try and get a different pencil texture on there. And then back to the Prismacolor Crimson Red. And soften with the peach. And then I'm going to go in with my white and finish up my shines here. And I want to go up and actually soften this shine that was up here, because this is supposed to be a more muted shine like the red one. And then I'm going to do these stars in the gold. So I'm going to add the darkest shadows with that Arteza Cocoa Brown. And I'm going to go in with my sand Prismacolor. I'm going to blend in with a little bit of the cream. And add some deeper yellow with the yellow ochre. And then finally I'm going to take that Copenhagen Prismacolor blue, and I'm just going to add a tiny highlight of blue to this shadow, because the blue orb is kind of casting a reflection or a shadow that would have some blue lighting in it onto the red bauble. And I'm going to just deepen up this bottom highlight with a little bit of extra color, so that it blends a little bit more from the light to the color to the shadow. And just blend that in. And then go in with the crimson red and deepen this highlight as well. Okay, so I'm going to leave these baubles as they are, just like this. Hopefully you can see how the deep shadows, the curvature of the shadows, and the colors following the lines of the circular shape has kind of given them volume. The underlighting, the extra underlighting, as well as the different light sources and the intensities of light kind of all play together to help give these ornaments a very 3D, you know, coming off the page kind of a look. Hopefully you found something that you can take away from this. You certainly don't have to do it the same exact way that I do it. I know I do a lot of layers, and sometimes I may overlayer. Just kind of take notes on what it is that achieves the look that you're looking for. So that will be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.